Yes, good morning, Dan. Shortly after the housing bubble burst, there was a lot of talk about derivatives and the trillions of dollars floating around. I've heard 30 up to over 100 trillion floating around. My question is, what happened to them, and aren't those IOUs still in existence?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're very much in existence. By all counts, it's about 180 trillion. So yeah, they're still alive and well. I think though during the housing crisis, there was a little bit of a confusion, I guess, not confusion, but there was a lot of news media calling these mortgage-backed securities on high-risk mortgages, and they were comparing them and considering them akin to derivatives, and or even credit default swaps, which are another form of derivatives, which they weren't really, but the media kind of, yeah, at least the conspiracy theory guys and a lot of the people that wanted to put a really negative face on this were talking like this was going to be the end of the world because of the housing crisis and the mortgage-backed securities. Was it a huge problem for the housing crisis? Yes. How was it caused? It was caused by the government. But aside from that, so what happened was that Wall Street got talked into packaging those mortgages into, subprime credit kinds of bond issues, which they did. That helped a lot. We've got then the Federal Reserve stepped in and bought up some of that. And all of this was in an attempt to keep the housing crisis and the financial crisis to not turn into a irreversible financial crisis. And it worked, and they did. Is some of that out there? Absolutely. There's still a lot of that out there and still will be out there. But it is separate from the derivative, the global derivative problem that we have. And what happened in 2008 did not necessarily create the kind of public fear about derivatives as you might think. It did create a bit of a private fear sector about derivatives, but not publicly. So derivatives are a huge, huge problem. And I've talked about it many, many times, Rich, in a panic. You might remember, I don't know how long you've been a listener, but you might remember about 2 years ago when Angela Merkel said that she was not going to bail out Deutsche Bank. I remember it specifically. It was on a Tuesday that she said that. And on Wednesday, I laughed about it. I said, that's the most comical thing I've ever heard. It is a problem, but for her to say she's not going to bail them out is a joke because they have hundreds of billions of dollars worth of derivatives. If that bank were to fail and those derivatives fail, it would be a domino effect through trillions of dollars of derivatives, and there would be a global depression almost immediately. That was on a Tuesday. She said that. I said it on a Wednesday. On Thursday, she bailed out Deutsche Bank. I mean, so they had to. I mean, it was going to happen. But that's how fragile the derivative market is in the credit default swap. We have a record of it. We know what's out there because there's this institution called the International Bank of Settlements. And they are the institution that tracks buying and selling of these products. So we know what's out there. It's not a matter that we don't know what's out there. But the Federal Reserve after 2008, I'm getting too deep into the weeds. I ought to stop. But let me just say this. The Federal Reserve after 2008 actually made things worse, not in the banking system. They were trying to revamp the banking system. And now what has happened is banks today, the big five banks, are allowed to count what was never allowed to be counted, derivatives as equity, as an actual asset to the bank. It's not an asset. An asset is something that you own, that you have, that you can sell, that you can buy, that has physical value to it. A building is an asset. Maybe ownership in a company like stocks, that's an asset. But derivatives is not an asset. It's not worth the piece of paper that it's written on. It's a bet that somebody bought by putting another bet on it. And it's nothing more than that. We can say a lot of things, but that's basically what it boils down to. So they exacerbated the problem. So now what we have, nobody has ever talked about this. You haven't heard this anywhere else. You're hear it now. I might have said it before. But the problem is banks that everybody says they're so strong now after the financial crisis. They're capitalized better than they've ever been. Of course they are. Now we're allowed to include all the derivatives and the credit default swaps as part of their valuation. So of course they're better off than they've ever been, but it's a house of cards. There's nothing really there. Hey, remember to click the subscribe button right here on the screen. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new content is added. And more importantly than anything, you don't want to miss all 3 live hours of Financial Issues every day from 9 to noon. And you can watch it on FISM.tv. That's FISM.tv.